Welcome to the Real Estate, Real Success podcast, where we talk about key business successes and lessons learned along the way in the hopes of inspiring brokerage owners and managers to find new ways to grow their business. I'm Chiyoko Kakino. In this episode, we're going to talk about acquisitions. So how to source potential opportunities, how to ensure that companies are aligned, but most importantly, how to ensure that agents are fully transitioned, excited, and supportive of the change. I'm super honored to be joined by Nick Lalli and Anthony Montanero from Century 21 Heritage House in Woodstock, Ontario. Thank you both for joining me today. Super excited to have you.
Thanks, Joko.
So I'm going to have to start by saying congratulations, because you are C21's Franchisees of the Year for 2022. So for those listeners that do not know what Franchisee of the Year stands for, it means number one, you are part of the Chairman's Circle, which of course, as you know, that's our top 30 companies. You demonstrate leadership in supporting your agents, and we're going to talk a little bit about what you're doing. You have significant market share in the markets in which you operate. You consistently portray a professional image in your community, and you give back to the community through a whole bunch of different nonprofit fundraising initiatives that you put on. So thank you so much and congratulations again.
Thanks,
I want to start off by you giving us a little bit of background of you and your journey into real estate. So Nick, why don't we start with you?
Okay, I think if you want to talk about before real estate.
Yeah, well, just talk about, kind of your background. Give us a little bit of a summary. It doesn't have to be in depth, but we just want to have a little bit of background and, what got you into real estate, how long you've been in real estate, and how you got to be in the position that you are with Heritage House.
Perfect. Well, I started before I was an electronics technician by trade, and realized that working for someone else for your entire life is not going to get you some of the nicer things for your family. So I turned to the only thing I thought I could do that was real estate. I got into it. Fortunately enough, I landed very quickly at Century 21 Heritage House. I actually started with Century 21 McClellan Hills, and the first acquisition I was a part of was when McClellan Hills kind of went over to Heritage House. So I found myself there, and then I was just elevated it through the business, through the great people that we have at Heritage House, to eventually broker of record and general manager and that kind of stuff. Just by being a good guy, I think. Not the best at anything, and with the company we had and the people that helped raised me up to that, and then handed everything over to Anthony, and now basically I do a lot of the coaching and a lot of the training around. Plus, we bring other people in as well, but I do a lot of that, and a bit of a sounding board for Anthony when he needs it. So yeah, I don't do too much other than that stuff, I think.
Which keeps you very busy, because I know you have a training session after this. So thank you so much. What year how long have you been with Century 21?
So 1996, January 6th, my license came in. I joined McClellan Hills, which was Century 21. And about 3 weeks later, I was with Heritage House, along with 9 other people, including one of the owners of McClellan Hills. We were at Heritage House, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me for my real estate career, for sure.
Well, thank you so much for your loyalty and all your support and being a great ambassador over the brand for the last number of years. So Anthony, why don't we go over to you? I wanted you to give us a little bit of background about your journey into real estate.
Yeah, so my journey was a little bit longer than Nick's was. When I finished university, I enrolled in what at the time was the CGA program, so Certified General Accountants. I thought I was going to be an accountant when I grew up. I worked initially in the manufacturing industry as accounting manager, as a controller. I entered the real estate industry as a controller for another real estate franchisor here in Canada. And then during my tenure there, I ascended into more of a franchising and operationals role, where I was working directly with broker owners on business planning and operational matters. Then eventually obtained my broker's license, and the rest, they say, is his history.
Great. And what is your role in the company?
Yeah. So, well, aside from being the broker record, I'm also responsible for the strategic direction, so overseeing the growth and the expansion of the brokerage, as well as the operational management of the company.
Great. Well, excellent. Well, I think you two are a perfect complement to each other. And I think it's interesting, Anthony, that you have that finance background along with operational and real estate. I think that's a really good, I'm going to say you're really rounded to talk about acquisitions, because a big part of acquisition is the financial side, right? Looking
That's
through the financials, determining, what the best agreement is. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we do that, so Nick, can you give us some background on C21 Heritage House, how many agents it has and how many offices you have and what markets they're in?
Yeah, we're pretty much covering all of southwestern Ontario, most of it right now. We've got I think right around 175 agents in 6 main offices, bigger offices, and I think about 5 or 6 satellite offices all over. So we have a huge footprint all the way to the North Shore Lakes, Lake Erie, all the way up to Georgian Bay and over to Guelph, and then of course south down to Brantford. So Woodstock is pretty much in the center of that. That's where it all started, and that's where we just spread out along our borders and kept moving out and finding great people that want to join in with our system. So it's worked out really, really well.
Now, for those listeners that might not be from the Ontario area or Toronto area, can you explain where Woodstock is and kind of your markets in relationship to Toronto?
So Woodstock, in relationship to Toronto, we say we're about about an hour and a half west of Toronto. So we like to say we're between London and Kitchener. So that's where we started, and there's still our head office is in Woodstock still.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about the growth of your brokerage over the past 6 years, because you've seen some substantial growth. At the end of 2016, I was looking back at the end of 2016, you had 97 agents, so just under 100 agents. But at the end of 2022, you had 175 agents. So that's about an 80% increase in agent count over 6 years. So you almost doubled it. And again, those numbers I think were from the end of December. So anyways, it's substantial growth. So we're excited to talk about, how you got there. So what do you think some of the key ingredients to your growth has been over the recent years?
Well, I think one of the main things is you have to have a desire and a target decision to make it. And so same with, we tell our agents, you got to look at your target market and have clear goals of what you want to do. When Mike Slager retired in 2012 as general manager of the Heritage House, I took over at that point, and we'd accomplished through Mike almost everything you could in a small market like we had. And I came to the realization early on that our only expansion was going to be outside our borders, because, I think Anthony's going to talk a little bit about this, but, adding 1 person, 2 people at a time is a very slow way to grow. We had so much market share, and we had such a big office in a small area that our only option was to go outside our borders. And at that time, Century 21 Home Realty was coming to a similar conclusion that they had to make some changes, and we found that out. And when you got your mind open and you're looking at expansion, these opportunities tend to pop up, and that one popped up, and that was the biggest acquisition at the time when Home Realty when we purchased Home Realty. Which has been a catalyst. And like when you're as an agent, when you sell one house, that brings you the opportunity to sell more houses. When we did that acquisition, all of a sudden people were talking about it, and that opened up more doors. And eventually we got to Anthony, who's just a dynamite at opening up these doors and finding them. But the more you do, it's like when an agent reaches critical mass, or a brokerage can reach critical mass when it comes to this kind of activity.
Well, absolutely. You're right. Because I always say too, what's the best way to sell a franchise in real estate is to open up a franchise. So as you say, is once people see, because everyone's watching each other, once people see that you're in the market to grow and they're looking at, maybe selling, maybe they're retiring or whatever the situation might be, then that's where you're going to get the leads, right? And instead of you proactively find them, those leads are just going to come in and across your desk. So that's,
you can never stop proactively finding them, but you will get more opportunities as you're trying to find things.
So just to summarize what you've basically said, so instead of, growing organically, you decided that kind of the key ingredients to your growth and the quick growth that you've seen, which is almost double again in 6 years, has been through acquisition. So over the time that you've been with the company, because you've been with the company a long time, how many acquisitions has Heritage House done?
Gosh, since I was, I think we're pushing around 8.
Oh, wow.
Probably 3 or 4 major ones, and then we did a lot of 2-man, 2-person, 5-person operations that had nowhere else to go type of thing that we took in, and I think we're looking in that kind of range. Interesting enough, I did a count of former owners that we have in our brokerage. I think we got about 15 former brokerage owners still active today, and over the course of even my time here, some have retired, and sadly some have passed away. There will be even more if it wasn't for that situation. When you figure how many former brokerages we have under our roof.
Well, that's nice. So they come into your fold and then they stay with your company. That's always
Yeah.
beneficial, because you already know that they're brand ambassadors, right? And they're supportive. And so I think that's a positive element. Which one was your biggest acquisition over the time that you've been with the company?
I think Home Realty was the biggest by just a few. I think Anthony might know the exact numbers, but I think our second would have been the independent that we picked up in Brantford last year or the year before. That would be number 2, but it'd be only by a few agents. Those would be.
And how many agents are we talking about?
Somewhere between 50 and 60.
Okay,
What would be our biggest singles all at once.
great.
Yeah.
So Anthony, why don't we go over to you and talk a little bit about the difference between an acquisition strategy and organic growth strategy, and how that is helping you meet your overall growth goals. So what are the benefits of an acquisition strategy versus an organic growth strategy?
Sure. So with an acquisition strategy, obviously you can grow much quicker at a quicker rate. Like Nick alluded to before, when you're in a smaller market, you either have the market share already, or there's just too few agents to choose from. And so, that's the challenge with growing organically in the markets that we are, is just basically the lack of realtors. So we have to go wide, and we have to go into different kind of markets. So really the acquisition strategy is our only option to grow at a faster rate.
Right. Well, I like how it seems like you've done like an analysis of your current markets, how much market share you have, how quickly you could go through organic growth, depending on how big your market is and how much market share you have. And that you've all made a conscious decision to, acquire brokerages for your growth in the markets in which you're operating in. So we talked a little bit about the benefits of an acquisition strategy is, you can grow quicker because you're adding 50, 60, agents to your portfolio at a single point in time. What are some of the disadvantages of an acquisition?
In my mind, there's probably 2 disadvantages. One being the cost. So depending on the size of the brokerage and the multiple that you would wind up paying for it, that could be a disadvantage if you don't have the cash and the support behind you. The other is probably making sure that the company that you end up with is in line with your values. So if you have a certain culture and you've worked hard to build that culture and the values that you've instilled in your agents, if that target company doesn't have the same kind of values, you'll be at a disadvantage.
Yeah, that would be a tough one to bring in people that aren't aligned, and then having to get them over to be aligned. That I could see how that would be very challenging. So Nick, back to you. Again, I know that as you mentioned, you've been with C21 Heritage House for some time, I think 25 years. So I want to ask you this question. Out of the 8 acquisitions that your company has made during the duration that you've been with the company, which one was the most challenging, and how did you overcome that challenge?
Yeah, I guess the most difficult one was the first one that I did. That was the major one, which would be Home Realty at the end of 2016. And there's a couple of reasons. Number one, I didn't have Anthony. That was a bit of a problem there. Number two, whenever you do a major thing for the first time, there's a lot of learning curves that things you don't know, things you don't realize. that just sort of spring up. So when you do anything for the first time, it'll be the hardest. And that time there wasn't a lot of people to lean on either to get information on anything that size. So when it came to 5-10 people coming over, it was really a lot simpler. When you're bringing over 50 people or more at the same time, there's a lot of questions and a lot of things we didn't foresee. No matter how hard we tried, with all the due diligence we tried, there were still more things. So I would say that one would be absolutely the most difficult one. And then as you learn, you start, you don't make the same mistakes. You learn different things, like any business or anything that you do. The more you do it, the better you are at it. So that I think is I would say that would be the most difficult one. Each one has its own peculiarities, if you will, that you have to try to foresee. But each time you do it, you learn more questions to ask and more ways to deal with things.
Great. And I agree with you. Sometimes you have to do things by trial and error to really learn what works. And again, every situation is different. And so you're customizing what needs to be done, or customizing, I'm going to say, the conversion plan for each particular acquisition that you've had.
Yeah, you said the other question you asked was how we got it done. I can tell you this is just the sheer will to get it done that got it done. If there's many times along the way that we could have stopped the process, and if we didn't want it very, very strongly, it would have stopped real early. And then I don't believe we would have had the rest of the stuff that happened today up until now, from then until now. So again, you have to know what you want. You have to be able to keep pushing through things. In our case, there's partners we had to convince that this was the right thing to do. It was, like Anthony said, it was an expensive thing to do, and it needed a lot of salesmanship, let's put it that way, to convince everybody and sheer will to get it through.
Does one particular thing come to mind that's when you look back at that experience that you say, I would have done this differently, and this is how I would have done it? Like, is there one thing that comes to mind, or is just little things here and there?
I think it's a lot of little things, to be honest with you. I think I would have looked at, we would have looked at a little more details, that kind of stuff. I guess Chris Leader, when he teaches, he says you got to work from a perspective of abundance rather than scarcity. It was like we were going to get this done, damn the details type of thing. Now with the other stuff that we've done, first of all, there's the knowledge, and second of all, we're in a good position, and there's more opportunities coming down the pipe type of thing, right? So I think those are the things you want to look at some details, but at the same time, the biggest businesses are built on risk. They're built on, so you can't just give up on any little detail. When there's something big that's going to happen, you have to think big, and you have to be willing to take care of the little details, or understand they'll take care of themselves.
Great. Anthony, let's go over to you. Since you're responsible for business development for your company, I want to talk about the process that you go through in order to find a potential acquisition opportunity. So I know that Nick mentioned, you start, acquire a brokerage, and then you start to get phone calls. So leads will come into you. But as Nick said, you're not going to just rely on that. You're going to be proactive in sourcing those opportunities. So can you talk a little bit about the process you go through in order to find potential acquisition opportunities? Because I know that's always the question that I'm getting asked, is like, how do I find people that might want to sell their brokerage to me?
The key is really you have to have a good understanding and your ear to the ground in each market that you're in. So the markets that we're in, the real estate board, for example, posts the movement within the board, whether new agents come on or agents transfer brokerages. And we kind of look at that really closely, because that's an indicator where, if you see a bunch of agents leaving a brokerage, 2 this week, 3 next week, another 2 in another couple of weeks, it kind of triggers you and says, okay, what's going on over there? Is the culture not right? Is the ownership not engaged at all? So we kind of look for those kind of trends and movements. also our agents as well too. They're doing deals with everybody in the marketplace, and they're hearing things. Agents like to talk about agents and spill their bad news, I guess, if you will. And just listening to them and their feedback, saying, hey, listen, you know what, there might be a potential over here or over there. And we kind of just jump on that and reach out. Now, if the company seems to be a good fit, what I've typically done in the past is I'll just send an email to the broker owner, just requesting, hey, why don't we get together for coffee? And the email basically congratulates them on their successes. It touches on the commonalities we're both facing in the market. So cost of operations, regulatory issues, even succession planning. And that kind of stimulates the conversation. And if I can get that meeting, we just keep on talking and take it to the next level there.
Great. So when you said, if the company seems to be a good fit, how are you determining whether a company is a good fit before you even talk to them? How are you determining a company might be aligned with the values and culture of your company?
The reputation in the market, they might be having issues behind the scenes we don't know about, but if they're a solid company and their agents are, solid agents out in the market and they're respected out in the market, then that kind of, I guess piques our interest and says, okay, is there an opportunity here for us?
Are you looking at, how are you deciding if a company is the right fit? Like, as you said, if they have good agents, if they're well respected in the industry and the community, what else are you doing in order to find whether a company might be a good fit for you?
Totally honest, we'll just creep them online. We'll look at their Facebook, we'll look at their Instagram, we'll see what's going on there, what they're posting, what their agents are kind of posting. We try to dig into their website and try to, see what their value proposition is, see if it's similar to ours. And if it's different than ours, hey, is there something we can capitalize on it as well too? There's something we could adopt.
Right.
Also, we like to see how long they've been in business. Sometimes, and not all the time, but, new offices are kind of red flags. If they just come into the market, how come they're losing agents, or how come they're not growing as the market grows?
Right. And so that might be, you might do a little bit more digging on new offices, or do you just, are you completely no to new offices, or you just like proceed with caution?
Proceed with caution.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how do you determine ahead of time too, how successful a brokerage is? Are you looking at agents or the brokerage production numbers, or how are you determining if they're successful and you want to actually bring over those agents to your brokerage?
Yeah, through the MLS system, we'll be able to pull their production numbers off. So we'll look at that and see if the company's growing, and certain agents we've been targeting, over the months to try to come over to us. Let's see what their production's like, and maybe let's try to take over the whole company and try to make a play for that company. Great.
And then how do you if so you send an email, hopefully they have a coffee meeting with you, you start to have those conversations. What if they're not ready to sell at that point? Like, how do you continue to nurture the lead?
We just just as an agent does, we just keep them engaged. I'll reach out every other couple of months, see how things are going. If something happened in the board, I'll kind of get their feedback on it. Just keep that contact going back and forth, be it a phone call, a text, or an email.
Great. Excellent. Let's talk about now what happens if a company that is open to be quiet. So now you've sent that email, you've had the coffee meeting, someone goes, yeah, you know what, I am open to exploring this with you. What are your next steps?
So we have an internal checklist. We call it the AIR, acquisition information requirements. And there's 5 categories on that checklist that we kind of look at. So the 5 categories being sales and marketing, legal and compliance, operations, HR, and obviously the financials. And, we'll ask for sales reports for the past 3 years just to see how the agents are doing, if they are growing. Ultimately, we tie those numbers back into their financials. As far as legal and compliance goes, any outstanding litigation, either with the brokerage itself or regulatory litigation. Premises details, operational systems they have, organizational charts, list of employees, starts, dates, remuneration. And then obviously the financials, which is the key. So income statement, balance sheet for the last 3 to 5 years, along with their tax returns. And if they have a budget set up for the current year, we'll have to take a look at that as well too.
Do you ask for that information in stages, or do you ask for it all at once?
No, I asked for it in stages. I learned that a long time ago. I used to give a list out right away, and it would just kind of scare people off and kind of intimidating. So we'll ask for it in stages. And usually the first one we ask for is either sales data on the agents or the financials.
Yes, I would think that's a little bit intimidating, asking for all of it. And I didn't think you would. I just wanted to make sure to clarify for the listeners that it's all done in stages and really gauging, because some people I'm sure are much faster in the process than others. And, I'm sure you're just reading, whoever the audience, like, determining, what, if they're cautious, you want to proceed with caution, right?
Right, exactly.
And take it a little bit slower. So I'm sure you're doing that. So let's talk a little bit about the financials, because that was one of the components that you request when you're going through this process. When you're going through a company's financials, what are you paying particular attention to?
Predominantly any synergies or economies of scale that would be beneficial to us. So, I kind of look at it as if we merge the companies together, is there cost savings on either side, or are there things that we can bring over to our side to add to our complement of services, as well as the growth of the company over time? That's the other component. So if the company is growing, there isn't a lot of attrition, then that's what we kind of hone in on and kind of focus on.
Right. How do you make sure, let's first of all, let's talk about the structure of the agreement. So I'm sure that you get to a point where, okay, now you've got your checklist. Now you have all the items, it's all checked off. Now you're going to get to the point where we're going to start to talk about the agreement and structuring the agreement. So what are the options available, and what are the pros and cons of each structure?
The structure of the agreement really depends on the size of the brokerage and what the target broker wants to see. So there's really two ways. There's an asset purchase, or there's a share purchase. And usually for smaller acquisitions, it's usually an asset purchase, because you're buying it out over time. So say, for example, the brokerage is $100,000, you might be paying 50,000 down and then 50,000 the year after, just to see what kind of attrition might have happened. The other one for larger ones usually is a share sale. And there's usually an earnout component with that. Now with an earnout, it's basically a win-win for the parties involved, both the target company and the brokerage. And with an earnout is you're having the broker that's selling, you're getting him to participate in the growth. You want them to stay on, especially with the larger brokerages. You want them to stay on to make sure that there is no breakage with the agents, that they're all beating off the same drum, if you will. So with the earnout,
that's okay.
It's measured against the baseline gross commission. And so when the deal closes, we're going to say the baseline gross commission is X. And after the first year, at the first payment date, if the baseline is higher, then the owner that sold will participate in that. So if for example, if it's 2% higher than what the baseline should be, then the payment on that first year will be 2% more. So they're getting to share into the profits of the company.
So they have some ownership in making sure, number one, they don't lose any agents. And because you're right, a lot of the agents are very loyal to their owner. Like we hear a lot of times that, why are you with a certain brokerage? They're like, oh, it's because of my managing broker. It's because of our, the owner of the brokerage. And so there's so many advantages to that, because then they'll make sure that no agents leave, and they're singing from the same song sheet that you are and getting them excited. And then the other thing is they're continuing to be a brand ambassador out there moving forward and bringing in new agents, and they actually get an incentive to do that.
And you mentioned about ownership. It's not really the ownership, it's the incentive, and it's having the skin in the game, if you will,
right?
Where they're still hanging around and they're participating.
Okay. So now that we've come to, let's just say that you've come to terms and a price with the agreement. So we're continuing to move forward. So now I want to know how you effectively communicate the acquisition to the agents and how you successfully transition them over to C21, because I'm sure it's scary. All of a sudden, one day you're being told that your brokerage is changing. Not a lot of people like change. So how do you communicate that transition?
So we'll hold an office meeting, or we'll get as many people as we can together into one room. And obviously, there's managers, they'll be told in advance, so they're not told the last minute. But also we'll tell the target broker that tell a couple of the key agents. And the reason why you want some of the key agents to know is because when you make that announcement, the selling broker is going to be there, the new brokerage is going to be there, and they're going to be nodding their head saying, yeah, this is going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. There's win-wins for everybody. but they're not really looking at the old owner and the new owner. They're looking at the top agents saying, okay, what are these guys going to do? And if those top agents are there at the announcement and they're nodding in their heads, then there's going to be a lot of buy-in, right? All the agents are going to be going, well, if Sally's in and she's agreeing to this, then it must be a good thing. So they'll get the buy-in from the more experienced agents. Also, you want to ensure that you eliminate any possible chance of agents leaving at that meeting. So at that meeting, it's key to have their new yard signs in place, their new business cards already printed and ready to be distributed at the end of that meeting. And also the paperwork to transfer their current listings. So, the new brokers would sign it, the old brokers would sign it, and all they have to do is take it to their clients, get that signed, and it gets transferred over.
Great. So you're eliminating as much work that it's much chance that they're like, oh no, I'm going to go switch because
exactly.
Everything's presented to them at that time.
That's right.
And then what about, so basically you're talking to influencers in that group prior to them, getting them excited, getting them, agreeing that it's a good change and it's a positive change for, themselves and the rest of the agents. And I really like that strategy because you're right. Agents are looking at each other because of course the two owners are going to be thinking that it's a great thing to do. And it's always nice to have that support. So I really do like that strategy. So we talked a little bit about making sure that one of the strategies is kind of the share agreement where the ownership stays and to make sure that there's no attrition. What should companies budget with regards to the percentage of agents that they might lose during an acquisition?
We typically set up 10 to 12% attrition loss when we start budgeting for the acquisition. That's what we kind of found in our experiences. It's usually about 10 to 12%.
All right. So that's what you're budgeting when you're looking at the new budget for as you go through that acquisition process.
That's right.
So Nick, let's go back to you. In addition to ensuring the transition experience is amazing and successful, I'm sure that it is also just as important to work towards retaining your agents all the time. So can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing for your agents to make them feel that they're supported and to stay loyal to your brokerage?
Well, I think there's two different ways to look at that. The two different categories. I think number one is you have to make them feel like you care for them, like you really support them and mean something, and then you should teach them how to make money. If you can have those two kinds of things, then there's very little reason for people to leave. Different things, we make sure we're acknowledging birthdays, awards, all those kind of things, making sure that our managers are there for them when they need them. We have area managers that are on call all the time. Myself and Anthony, we're there when they need something, 10 o'clock at night when they're sitting with an agent, with a client or something. They can call somebody if that person is tied up they can call the next person down the line. So we have that kind of relationship with our agents. We want to make sure that we're there when they need us. When it comes to family things, anything else like that, we definitely try to do that. And then we try to do the engagement in the office on the business perspective. We try to teach them how to make money. We contract with Chris Leaders Edge training. So we run the in-office program twice a year, the spring and in the fall. We try to do that. Sometimes things get bumped back and forth. We do Buffini. We bring in other things. We've got Impact Initiative. There's all kinds of different people that are going to relate to different trainers, but we try to provide all those things. We have a meeting that we call the roundtable discussion every Monday afternoon, which is a brokerage-wide meeting, which helps people because our footprint is so big, right? St. Thomas to Guelph and Brantford all the way to Goderich area, Durham area. We've got such a big footprint that this is where everybody can meet on Zoom once a week, and that's in addition to the individual office meetings in the bigger branches. They have individual office meetings as well every week, so that gives an opportunity to go into their local branch and see the people do their work in the building with their colleagues. We try to support all our agents in their charity functions. We're pretty good at that. I think it depends on the branch. You do different things, golf tournaments. I know Kitchen does karaoke stuff, karaoke nights and those kind of things. Lots of fun fun stuff like that. Anthony can be seen flipping burgers in the parking lot, different lunch times, different branches, all those kind of things. I don't know if I mentioned our mentorship program, which helps people when they're getting started. We're just rolling that out. It's been a long time we've been working on that, but we're just rolling that out. So new people will get started, and that's been the important aspect of people being able to stay in the business, let alone stay in your office. If you can help them at the beginning with that. We do in-house coaching, the managers and myself, so they don't have to go pay $1,000 to another company a month. They've got somebody in the office that they can reach out to, or that they can have regular meetings with to oversee their business, those kind of things. So it's a big thing. Awards, Christmas holiday parties, those kind of things. We try to bring people in as much as we possibly can to be part of the family, so to speak. The ones that do become that, we find they're not going anywhere. We've got huge numbers of people that are in our brokerage that have been here longer than I have. So it's not unusual. And then we've got the people that just started yesterday or last week. So we've got everything in here, but we really like people to stay. I call it cradle to grave brokerage. I really like people to come in here and stay till they're done. But we do everything we possibly can to get them engaged, get them coming in, to make them understand we care, and we care about their business, and we care about them making a good living, and we just bring it out every chance we can, and we're open to when somebody else, when some new thing comes out, we're open to trying it. We're open to new stuff and to all that, whatever it takes.
Well, you have some amazing team members, amazing realtors with your company. They are so supportive, and they become brand ambassadors. Like I can name a ton of agents at your brokerage because they're posting, all the Easter Seals initiatives you're doing and the fun things that you're doing for the culture. And it just really looks like a fun organization that I personally would want to be part of. So I think you're doing amazing things. You're doing all the training, the office meetings, all the coaching. I think just the combination that's why you're, franchisees of the year.
I forgot you mentioned the gala. We do a gala once a year, which is coming up in March 4th. Those that are in Ontario, Southwestern Ontario, you should come to that. You can still reach out and get some tickets. It goes to Easter Seals. It's a big thing, and it's a lot of fun. And I did neglect one thing that's very, very important. And I think a lot of owners that I've talked to before, we have really awesome staff. They're often how do I say it, unsung heroes. But we have great staff in all our branches that support the agents, and lots of times they're the first thing and the first line of defense when it comes to keeping our agents happy, right? And you can't neglect having great staff. I know you guys at head office, you guys are great with that. You practice that too, and if you're not doing that as a brokerage, if you don't have great people that are supporting the agents as administrators, what are you doing for them, right?
I agree. You do have wonderful staff members. I've been to your offices. I've been to the Gold Gala, and you have just generally just a wonderful organization. So, and I'm sure you're very proud. Anthony, before we move on to kind of, summarizing and talking a little bit about what tips both of you would give to brokerages, if they wanted to, to look at acquisitions as part of the overall growth strategy. I just want to go back because we didn't touch on it, and I definitely want to. When you, of course, make that agent announcement, you're giving them the yard signs, the business cards, all the paperwork that needs to be done. I want to talk a little bit just for a second about the onboarding program. So what does that look like? Are you doing, like, you're having an agent announcements? What does it look like afterwards? Is it one-on-one with, as Nick just talked about, your great staff that's there to support agents? Is there smaller group training, or what does the onboarding process look like?
Yeah, so what we'll do is our agent services department, there's 2 people in that. And what they do is they'll reach out to the newer agents, similarly what they do with our existing agents, and they get them ingrained in the Century 21 systems. So for example, they'll reach out to them, they'll customize their websites. We as soon as an agent comes on, we take control of their website. So we'll upload them, we'll update it, put blogs on it. We'll also get all their contacts, we'll upload it into Engage. So that way they got their CRM running. And there's also an onboarding booklet we have as well too, where they kind of follow the process as well, just to make sure that we didn't miss anything. And what we say we're going to cover, we're going to cover.
Great. So you're actually helping them customize their website and
Yeah.
helping them load their CRM. I think that's fantastic because again, depending how comfortable you are and how tech savvy you are, sometimes you're going, oh my gosh, I've been all my list of contacts now, I have to move them and I have to do all the CASA consent and I have to learn how to be a website designer. It's very intimidating. So it's so nice that you have people there that are basically, working with the individual agents, determining what their needs are and then helping them actually execute on it versus just training them. So that's definitely a differentiator that for other brokerages, I'm sure. So either of you can answer this question. Is knowing what you know now, what are some words of wisdom that you would give someone if they want to acquire another brokerage? So what are some of the things that they should consider or look out for or be aware of?
I would look at the tenure of the agent base. If there's agents there that have a history of changing brokerages every 2 or 3 years, the chances of them coming over are probably slim. They're going to be part of that 10 to 12% because they're going to use that as an opportunity to move on to the next greatest thing. That's probably one. The other one I think is address things as they come up as you're negotiating and as you're going through due diligence. And I'm the first one that's guilty of this. Something will come up and I say, yeah, we'll deal with that later. That's not a problem. And then at the 11th hour, it's a problem. Or it's perceived as a problem. So the sooner you tackle it and get it out of the way, then the better off you are going down that. When you go down that path, that'll be a lot smoother.
Nick, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think Anthony's covered it mostly, but one of the things I would say, if this is something that you guys are interested in terms of whoever's watching this, then you have to act with specific intent. So it's funny because as broker owners, we have no trouble telling our agents what to do, but then when we do it, when it comes to us, we don't do it. So we should be teaching our agents specific intent. When you're doing an open house, what's your specific intent? Any ad you put out, what's your specific intent? If you guys decide that your specific intent is to grow, then that's going to make a mark on what it is you're going to do today or tomorrow or the next day. So make specific intent, figure out and then all the stuff you learn about how to sell a house, or gain clients. This is how you're going to do it. So you're going to prospect, you're going to do your due diligence, you're going to look up people, and you're going to do those things if it's your specific intent to grow. The next thing is, like Anthony, I think, has alluded to, you have to identify your target market. Maybe you don't want to go after a 100 person agent or 300 person agency. Maybe you want to start with that four person office around the corner, that team that's in your marketplace that you think is always like that fits in with your culture in terms of ethics, which is the biggest thing, right? Another thing too that I think I didn't hear Anthony say it, and I forgot to say it, is we have a pretty good thing going. So we're in a position now, we don't take every single thing because we don't want to rock the boat in some of our smaller markets when we have some great people already there, right? So if it's going to be somebody is going to be something like he said, well, he did talk about the market reputation and stuff. No, you don't need the next one. Keep shopping until you get the next person or the next brokerage, big or small, that's going to fit into your family.
Well, and I like what you said, and we hadn't even talked about that, is just determining your target audience. And I just want to put extra emphasis on that because I'm a marketing background and we always talk about target audiences. But, that's so important because if you're a smaller brokerage, and again, if you're going to look for your first acquisition, to say 50, 60, 100 people, you might not even have the support team to be able to convert those agents, right? So I'm sure that you're going to have to look at the size of your brokerage and the size of, the acquisition that you're looking at, right?
Yeah, we talked about it's not just size, it's even location.
Okay.
I think Anthony and I have had this discussion, and we're going to take somebody in. How are we going to support them? Mm-hmm. What are we offering those people that we're taking in that's 3 hours away from anything you already have or whatever. So if you can't support them, then maybe you got to be very careful if that's the next thing that you're going to do. So support is everything. And it's like you say, when you list a house and you don't list it well and it expires, that costs you business. If you take over a brokerage that you cannot support, that's going to make your next acquisition more difficult. So definitely you want to have positive results, and you have positive results by not biting off, well, I shouldn't say not biting off more than you can chew, but at least something you got to be able to support. So you got to be able to support whatever you're doing.
Well, I'm sure too, it's important for you or Anthony or, other people in your organization to be there, so as you said, if you're looking at somewhere 3 hours away, I guess you got to ask yourself, do you want to drive every day for 3 hours for the next 3 months till people get comfortable, you start to build relationships, they become loyal to you. But as you said, that's a huge factor, right? That I wouldn't even, think about. But I can see how that is so important, because you really have to probably be there to support them and make agents feel comfortable and feel, just comfortable with the transition.
There are some small places in Northern Ontario, for example, that are remote and whatever. They're not going to get any other support from anybody else anyway. So the support you're offering over the phone and online and Zoom and stuff may be all that's available to them anyway, so that you can still help them, right? So again, you got to look at every single person, every single acquisition with its special needs, special things. So I'm not suggesting don't look, in everything, but you have to really analyze everything before you take those things on. You have to be able to support them in the support that they need.
Well, thank you very much, Nick and Anthony, for those tips and those things that people should be aware of. I'm going to ask you my final question to both of you. So maybe, Nick, we can start with you. So what is your biggest challenge that you've ever faced, whether it's in your career or in your life, that ended up being a blessing in disguise?
Well, you asking me first?
Sure.
Can I hear Anthony's first?
Sure. Do you want Anthony to go first?
I wouldn't do that to him. I won't do that to him. But I don't know. The biggest challenge that, let's keep it on professional. I guess if you want to talk about what's the biggest challenge, I guess let's talk general. Partnerships is the biggest challenge. Who is your spouse? It starts with your spouse. Your biggest challenge, if you got the right partner. Do you have a business partner? What's the biggest challenge is having the right person that is your business partner or your spouse. And then that goes into the business when you're looking at what is your biggest challenge, and in the context of that we're talking about when it comes to acquisitions. What's our biggest challenges is who are you trying to acquire? Is it somebody like Anthony has said before that's got the same values as you do, that has the same, perhaps the same brand? Like we've had less trouble with acquisitions within the Century 21 family than we've had people outside. So that's because we already share something. We already share those things. So the biggest challenge, and not notwithstanding, the biggest acquisition challenge I had was Home Realty, even though it was in the Century 21 system, simply because it was the first one.
Right. Excellent. So Anthony, what about you? What's your biggest challenge that you've ever faced that ended up being a blessing?
That's a good question. This is gonna sound strange. Everything's basically a challenge, right? It's like, how am I going to improve on the next one? If we're talking strictly acquisitions, we've got this company. Okay, how are we going to get the next company? And how are we going to get the next company? And what are we going to do? And what do we have to do differently? Because at least me and Nick can vouch for this, is I'm always trying to say, okay, is there a better way of doing it? And then what's it going to look like in the end? So is it a blessing? I think it is, because you're learning from your past mistakes, right?
Well,
no acquisition has gone perfectly. As much as I'd like to think it hasn't. And it's just learning from that and just growing with that.
Well, and again, you have amazing agents as part of your brokerage. So obviously those people have come through acquisitions, right? And so even though it might be challenging at the time and you might be going, oh my goodness, what am I getting myself into? But both of you just have a wonderful organization. So proud of C21 Heritage House and, all the things that the management team, the staff and the realtors do for the community, and just how they elevate the experience in the real estate industry. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences about acquisitions. How can people get a hold of you if they want to talk to you or or maybe, get some extra feedback on, a project they're working on. Anthony?
Well, they can reach me by email. So anthony.montanero@c21.ca, or my cell phone number is 905-334-2016. They can, try to call me, send me a text.
Great.
And I'll get
And
back to
again,
you.
if there's anyone out there that's looking that they want to be inquired, definitely call you, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely. And Nick, how can people get a hold of you?
Same thing, except I'm Nick.Lalli, not Anthony.Montanero at c21.ca or century21.ca. And my cell number is 519-536-1640, but you can Google us because we're part of the Great Century 21 system. We come up. So definitely, one of the biggest things is being able to reach out. That's helped me a lot, being able to reach out within the system for advice. Some of the owners that have come before me in terms of success in our Century 21 system have helped me out with advice when I needed it, and we would, anything that we could do, we would help as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Again, as part of the C21 culture is, collaboration and supporting each other. So thank you, both of you, for your, time today and sharing your experiences. It's just been a great conversation.
Thank you so much.
You're either listening to this podcast live or listening to the recordings on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Google Podcasts, or of course, you went to the century21franchise.ca website. Century 21 is one of the world's largest residential real estate company in the world, with presence in 86 countries. Here in Canada, we are 11,000 plus strong, and we're looking to align ourselves with like-minded individuals who share the same vision to what the future of brokerages look like. So if you're interested in growth opportunities, if you want to open your own franchise, please feel free to reach out to me or my colleague, Gary Zalepa. Our contact information can be found on the century21franchise.ca website, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook, Instagram, whatever you choose, and we can set up a chat. So again, thank you so much for being with us, Nick and Anthony, and good luck in your future endeavors.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.